Okay, so we'll start with some introductions. We'll go around the virtual room, and folks can take an opportunity to introduce themselves. Then we'll have Graham cover the I guess I don't know if it's 1 or 2 months worth of some of the new features that came out. Power BI has a monthly feature release, so always a lot to cover in each of our meetings. And then we're going to hand it over to Sharath for the main event. He's covering near real-time analytics with Azure Synapse Link. And time permitting, we'll talk about some of the other things that came up at Microsoft Ignite and hopefully will be available soon. And we always keep some time at the end if people have specific questions and whatnot. Okay, so I'll kick things off in terms of intros, and I'll ask folks to feel free to unmute themselves and do a similar intro. No obligation, but it's good to put the names to some voices at least, and feel free to turn your camera on. I'll stop sharing when maybe I'll keep this up so people could say. You should be able to see faces in the other panel, even though they won't be as large, but at least you have these cues. So my name is Jared Brown. I'm the VP of Data and Analytics at Talon. Talon, we're professional service consultants. I obviously focus on everything data and BI related. We do a lot of work with Microsoft. So my goal for this user group is to kind of share knowledge about Power BI. It's a platform that's just had its 5th birthday, although it's been around for a couple of years before that, living as part of Excel. And really like to kind of share what we've learned because we spend a lot of time working with it with the larger community. Really appreciate folks joining. So feel free to tell other of your colleagues if you think that they would get some value out of it. But that's really our goal in creating this group, and something that I'm very pleased that we've had an opportunity to kind of share. As far as a BI challenge, one of the things that we've kind of seen recently is, now that Power BI is starting to get legs and a lot of folks are using it, there's companies that are starting to run into some governance challenges. So we've been spending a lot of time recently looking at best ways to support our customers in that regard. Yeah, so I'll open up the floor, and whoever would like to introduce themselves next, feel free.
Hey everyone, my name's Casey Philcox. I currently work at Travelers as a software engineer. What I want to get out of this group, reconnect with some friends of mine, of course, but also, I've been kind of removed from some Power BI work recently, so using this group to stay up to date on, monthly updates as well as anything new and exciting in the world of Power BI.
All right, great, thanks, Casey.
Yep. Hey, I'm James Airy. I'm a lead consultant at Talon. I work pretty closely with Jared. I actually used to work right outside of his office until I was forced to work from home. But I'm also, as of recently, a Microsoft recognized solution expert with Power BI. So I'm trying to live up to that, given that I have not had my biggest BI challenges that I haven't had a chance to work with Power BI in several months, but luckily I have some projects coming up. So,
yeah, that is pretty funny. So James is one of the 33 folks that were recognized with that distinction from Microsoft, and I have him working on all data platform projects, not Power BI. So, but we'll get him back around to the Power BI stuff.
Everybody, my name is Michael Thomas. I am the Chief Data Scientist at Catchbrook Analytics, and that's a data science consulting company, and we work closely on some projects with Talon as well. We love Power BI, glad to be here. Recent BI challenge is, would love to in Power BI join on multiple columns easily, like you do in SQL. There's some nice workarounds that you can do, but waiting for that in the managed relationships data model side of the equation. Maybe I'm missing it, but Jared, you can tell me that.
No, still only a single column. there's a way to work around it. Maybe we'll, I mean, you have to do it in the data model, but maybe we cover that. Well, there's a couple ways to do it. Maybe we'll cover that afterwards, time permitting.
Yeah. But nice to be here.
Yep, I spoke up earlier. This is Cliff Render. I'm the new director of IT over at Integris Group. We're a PNC insurer based out of Glastonbury. So I'm just excited of learning a little bit more about Power BI. We have some data warehouse and reporting challenges, and it's something that may be a good fit for us.
Yeah, and I guess I should have mentioned, when we used to do these events in our Glastonbury office quite frequently, we'd have an opportunity to, get some pizza, have some beverages. So, by all means, if you get a second, run over to the fridge and feel free to grab something.
Sounds good.
But hopefully we'll get back to that point again soon.
Hi, I'll jump in real quick. I work with Cliff at Integris Group out in Glastonbury. And yeah, I'm just hoping to learn more about BI as we go. So
great. Well, welcome both of you.
Hey everyone, my name is Noah Kale. I'm a business development manager at Talon, so help manage our customer relationships in the Connecticut region. So great to meet everyone, and no specific BI challenge for me, but always like joining the group just to learn a little bit more about Power BI.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Salerno. I'm a senior consultant. I've joined Talon about a couple of weeks ago, if not maybe a month. So I'm just learning to learn as much as I can in terms of the knowledge transfer in the group, and to understand some of the challenges that are when you're working within an Azure environment, specifically PowerShell, and trying to recover a Power BI workbook when it's deleted. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Sharath here. I work for Underwriter Laboratories as an IT architect. I'll be talking again later on that near real-time analytics topic. Recent BI challenge is exactly what Jared was talking about. So now a lot of our business users have learned Power BI, and then we are actually facing some governance challenges. What do I get out of this group? There are lot of people who are great here in Power BI. I am not that strong. I generally deal with the stuff which happens before the data comes to the visualization layer. So I always get to learn new stuff from this group. That's what I look for.
Don't let them fool you. Sharath did an amazing presentation a couple times ago on Power BI basics integration with Synapse. So today is the part 2 of that event. So definitely looking forward to it.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey everyone, my name's Graham Atkinson. I'm a senior consultant over at Talon. I've been with Talon for 3 years now, something like that. And I've been handling the monthly feature updates for these Power BI user groups. So I'll be talking after this about the monthly updates. But I work with Power BI pretty much every day. All sorts of challenges and obstacles to overcome. Most recently, worked on a pretty interesting one where the user wanted the less strict version of row level security, like the broadest scope. So we had to do an or join on the conditions rather than and join, which sounds simple, but we had to find quite the workaround for that one. But yeah, I like coming to these groups, just seeing what you all have to say, doing some education here and there, and a lot of fun to be here with everybody that's excited about Power BI.
Hi, I'm Brian Barbera. I work with Eversource, and recent BI challenge would be trying to figure out whether in the Power Query end is, what's the advantage of, doing the table buffers? Will that help speed up processes that are quite slow? And what I want to get out of this user group is just to learn more about Power BI.
Yeah, so table buffers, that's an interesting one. for those that don't know, they allow pulling the data into memory. So maybe you have a consistent, step that kind of guarantees consistency, so you're not running it twice if you're pulling the same data set. I don't know. That's definitely some of the deeper capabilities, but that's definitely a good one. Yeah, Brian, we'll have to delve a little deeper in that. I'm not sure we'll be able to cover that this call, but it is something I've seen come up recently. So. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, let me go ahead and advance the slides here, and apologize if you hear some children in the background. All right. So for those that don't know, we've been meeting. It's got to be like 3 years or more at this point. Every other month, typically. Sometimes taking a break in the middle of summer or winter. So we'll have to. I think our next meeting is scheduled for June, but then so timing this year might work out well where we don't miss a month. If interest are continues to grow, we could change the meeting frequency to more frequent or try different things. Really looking for people to participate in the group. So definitely want to thank Sharath, for instance, for presenting his second time. Michael Thomas has presented in the past, so it doesn't have to be a lengthy feature presentation. If you just want to show a single capability that you learned, feel free. We could have a series of small things to present in a particular meeting. If you have a challenge that your company is facing and you want to maybe use the meeting to as kind of like a working session to work through it, we're certainly open to that as well. So don't hesitate if you'd like to participate, and feel free to reach out. We do have some official positions in the user group that we're always looking to fill, but if you feel a little bit like you don't want to make that kind of a commitment, even just coming with a particular topic is certainly very welcome. There's two different websites that we have information about the user group. There's the meetup, which many of you probably found. There's also the Power BI user group. So if you go to pbiusergroup.com, you could sign up here. I'd encourage people to sign up and become a member of this group. In addition to the same announcements we share on Meetup, you also have a wealth of learning materials and access to. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. A lot of other materials, education and otherwise, that you can leverage from the user group site. So let me find my next slide again. So I guess with that, and unless anybody else has any other questions, we can move over to the Power BI feature updates that Graham's going to present. But before I officially hand it over, any quick questions? All right. I guess that said, Graham, feel free to take it away.
All right. Thanks, Jared. I'm just going to steal the screen here. And can everyone see my PowerPoints?
Yes. Yep.
Great. All right. So I'm going to be covering the monthly updates from the months of February and March. The April ones have not come out yet. But the list is actually rather short for these 2 months. There's not a huge number of changes, but there's some pretty cool ones. So we'll just dive right in. In February, there were a number of changes in the reporting section. So the direct query for Power BI datasets we actually talked about in our last PUG meeting. And this is a pretty cool feature where you can query a Power BI dataset hosted in the service and actually edit the relationships in the model rather than just a live connection. So they're continuing to work on this. A few small updates were made in February. I believe the extent of the updates there was the ability to drop a Power BI data set from the model and have it cleanly remove all of the tables and relationships. There's a few more updates on that in the month of March. They also added a search bar to the ribbon in Power BI. This is a feature that they've been missing for a while, and it's nice to see that they've finally come back to add it to kind of put it more in line with other Microsoft products. But now there's a nicely placed search bar at the very top of the ribbon where you can look for something that you might not be able to find. You can almost ask it a question if you want. It has a lot of good articles and terms for you to look up. I have a demo just showing off the basic usage of that later, but it's pretty good at recognizing what you want to do. And even if you just click on it and don't type anything, it'll kind of show you a list of recommended next steps, if you will. Like it'll show you import data if you have an empty report, or like themes if your report is ready to be styled, stuff like that. The new field list preview, which we also talked about last time, where they changed kind of the way that the field list is displayed, has now extended to the 3 different views of Power BI. Originally, it was only available in the report view. They've moved that so that you can now see it in the report view, in the data modeling view, and the relationship view. So just some consistency throughout the application. They've also added a number of small changes, a little bit more than just what's listed here, to the small multiples, which is another preview feature that we talked about last time. I'll show that off a little later, but essentially what the small multiples does, if you weren't around last time, is it's another way to break down your data by categories in specifically a bar chart and a line chart. Rather than having multiple lines in the same visual, it gives you a bunch of smaller visuals that show you kind of separate graphs. And they have, since the implementation last time, they've added some customization options, background colors, grid lines, kind of small things. They've also changed the way that their color picker looks. I'll show that off as well. I quite like what they've done with it. Before, you were rather limited in the colors that you could have on a Power BI visual, on your text, on whatever. Now it's a little bit easier to choose the color you want, and there's actually a RGB color selector. So if you can't find it in their pre-made list, you can always just insert your RGB value, which is a feature that I've been looking for a while. And then finally, within the reporting section, there's a new filter option. So in the Power Query editor, you can now filter text by is empty and is not empty, which for the text data type is slightly different than is null and is not null. So good to see that they've extended that capability. Moving over to the second column here in our analytics, the anomaly detection, which is something we talked about a few months back now, was something they had in preview. This has now been moved into the ribbon. It's now no longer in preview. And it was a pretty cool analytics feature. It tries to detect anomalies for you, and now it's just a little bit easier to find that and access the anomaly detection. And then finally, for the month of February, a new data connector was made to Microsoft Teams. So every month they release a number of data connectors to third-party applications, but this time this is a connection to an internal Microsoft application. And the connection to Teams, I think it's still in preview, but it's pretty good from what I was able to test with it. It lets you see analytics like how long you've spent in meetings, how long you've spent sharing your screen, who you've called, stuff like that. So kind of a cool way to tie in to another Microsoft product and analyze your performance or your business performance. So that's it for the month of February. If there's any questions, we can stop here. Otherwise, I have a demo from some of these stuff that I've covered afterwards, but I'll just move right into March. So in March, our list is a little bit shorter here, but there's still a few changes that are worth talking about. Some more changes were made to the direct query for Power BI datasets. I think the changes for March were the ability to inherit from specifically Azure Analysis Services folder structures. something along those lines. Pretty small change, but they're continuing to work on that feature, which is good to see. I think it's important that we'll be able to access Power BI data sets and actually modify them within the Power Query editor. So happy to see any changes to that. They've also continued to update the small multiples. They added some additional features like word wrap and some background settings. Mostly small changes on the reporting side, but as I said, it's good to see that they're continuing to work on these preview features, and we should soon see them in the out-of-the-box application. By the way, if you're not familiar, if it says preview after what I have written here, that means that if you just boot up Power BI out of the box, you won't be able to use this. You won't see it. In order to use it, you have to go into the options and settings and enable the preview feature under options preview features. So it's kind of, you could consider it in beta, and eventually the preview feature will be released to out-of-the-box Power BI. On the other side of the screen here, under analytics, this is actually a pretty big change. They have added the ability to put in a constant x-axis line on line charts. So previously, you could pretty easily add a y-axis line if you just had a measure and set it to a value and then put that into your lines. But there's not really a good way to have an x-axis line. So this is pretty useful if you have like a date range on a table and you want to have a line on a specific date. Now you can just set that in the analytics settings, and I'll show that off a little later.
Hey, Graham, does that allow you to set that dynamically? So like you could indicate a particular piece of data where the line should occur at. So like if there's like a Boolean on a field, like throw a line there.
That's a good question. You may be able to set the value equal to a measure, which would allow you to do it dynamically, but I didn't try that. It's a good question.
My guess is no, but maybe eventually. I don't know if we're wagering on it, but
if we are wagering on it, I'll go with you, Jared. I don't think so, but we can test it out. And the last thing in the month of March is under the modeling changes here. Just a few minor changes. There's a brand new if function in Power BI. For everybody that's used DAX here, you've probably used the if function. This new if.eager is the same exact thing. It just uses the eager execution plan, which means that rather than just evaluating the true or false, it'll always evaluate the one that it goes down. It will evaluate both. So I'm not exactly sure when you'd want to use this in Power BI, but the option's there for you now if you want to. And then there's also a few changes to the way that the calculate function in DAX works. So calculate's another measure or another function in DAX that you've probably used in almost every measure you've created if you have created measures. And they've just changed the way that the filters can be combined, which is the second argument in the calculate function. So now you can just put the filter conditions inside of an and or an or statement. So it's rather than chaining the filter conditions, it's just a little bit more intuitive on how to combine filters. If you haven't used DAX, that probably doesn't make any sense, and it shouldn't. But for those of you that have used DAX, you might have struggled with getting the filters to work correctly, and they're continuing to make the user experience just slightly more intuitive. So that's it for the features that we're covering for February and March. I am going to do a quick demo now, just a few minutes of showing off some of these features in practice. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now or later, but I'm just going to start showing off some of these. So what we have on our screen now in this Power BI desktop application is a number of small graphs. So this is these small multiples on a line chart. To have or to create your small multiples, we covered this last time, but just so you're aware, instead of having something in your legend, so here we have product and legend, we can see all these lines of sales by month and year. If we drag product now down to small multiples, rather than having those 6 different lines on the screen, now we have 6 different charts. And what they've added since our last meeting is the ability to go into our settings, go into grid layout, and change the background color of these charts, change the thickness of the grid lines, the line styles, just some rather basic customization options. They've also added the ability to have word wrap on the title. So this is probably not something that would come up all that often. But if we were to make these titles a little longer by dragging in segment, now we have, wait a second. Yeah, we have many more charts, and they have much longer names. And if we shrink down the size of our visual, we can see that they start to word wrap, like right here. Previously, this would have gotten cut off, but we now have word wrapping, so this is going to drop on down to the next line. So once again, pretty basic stuff, but just things to be aware of if you want to use small multiples. We can also talk about the color selector here. So our lines here are this kind of bright blue color. And if you've used the color selector in Power BI before, this probably looks slightly different. Rather than these colors all kind of touching each other, it's a little bit easier to select them and see their colors. But now you can also click this More Colors button, and we have our RGB values that we can enter. So really nice, gives us some extra control over the colors of what our data looks like. All right, and let's see. The last thing, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Graham, I was just going to ask, I might have missed this last time because I wasn't here for the whole thing, but for the small multiples, is there a way to control the order that they appear in?
Yeah, so the order that they appear is going to be based on the sort order of your first, the first category that you have in here, so product. So you see the thing that starts with A
it's going
first.
alphabetically. So, okay, so you could form a different sorting, like you could sort that column by something else. Though.
Yeah,
like
sure.
If you're handling that sort by.
Yeah, you could go in here and you could say, you know, instead of sorting product by this, I want to sort it by a different column, right? You could go into column tools and sort by, and now we could sort this by like a sum of sales or something else.
Nice.
Yeah, so the last thing that I was going to show off here before I hand this off is the x-axis lines that I had talked about in those demos. So here we have a running total of the sum of sales over all time. And I've put in these dashed lines on 2 specific dates. So to do that, it's actually in this last tab here in the analytics, which is maybe not something that you've used very frequently. I know I certainly haven't, but it's kind of hidden in here in the x-axis constant line. You can select these and put in a specific value. And by the look of things, you can't put a measure here. Just try to. No, it's not going to let me drag a measure there. So it does have to be a specific value that you choose. But you know, you have complete control over how many you add and what the value is. Just kind of a cool way to add some additional customization, if applicable, into your line charts or column charts.
So could looking at this now, like could you name the lines? So for example, you could, like, if you is that the data label?
Not actually sure. Let's. Okay, so we have a data label, but a name.
Oh, okay. So then if you click on the thing there up there, can you?
There we go. Yep.
And then is it showing it on the other one, or is it just blocked out by the header? It looks like.
On this one, I didn't turn it on yet.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's like a customizable series here. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So you could compare this then maybe with like with something in 2020, and like you could put a line where lockdown started so you could see the effects.
Exactly. That would be definitely a cool use case for it.
We have a cool use case that I've worked on with a client. I don't know if you want me to pitch in. Sorry to butt in. But they are a marketing company, and they do monthly marketing campaigns, which has a lag effect as to when people actually respond to the marketing campaign. So they want to know, the date that the marketing campaign itself kicked off, and then take a look at, the customer acquisition that they received after each of those, what they call drop dates. So we used to have to create a bar chart with really tiny skinny bars that acted as these dotted vertical lines, because Power BI didn't have this feature yet. So we are super excited to have this.
Awesome. That's definitely a great use case.
That's actually pretty clever though too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty cool. Your original solution, although definitely you'd call that one a workaround.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that pretty much does it for the feature updates. As I said, it's a really short list for the past 2 months. But if there's any questions, any comments, feel free to ask now. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back over to, I believe, Sharath is next up.
Yep, I think it's me.
All right. Anybody, any questions? And if not, we could always come back at the end and have some more. All right. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Graham. Definitely appreciate it. I'm playing with a few things myself already, so.
Not a problem.
All right. Take it away, Sharath, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jared. And thanks, Graham. Those features, the last one was helpful. I'm pretty sure if I explain that to our Power BI developers in my company, they're going to have 1 or 2 use cases where they can use it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And while I'm sharing, I read the news about James, about the award. Congrats, James. That's great, actually. Right. Just a second. Right. Let me know if you can see my screen. Huh, it did not share. Now it should be
there we go.
All right, perfect. So I introduced myself. Again, I'll do it. My name is Sharath Shivaram. I work as an IT architect with Underwriter Laboratories. We work with Jared and team. We have been working with them for a good number of years now. So this is my second session with the group. In my previous session, we had spoken about the Azure Synapse Analytics, and then we even saw how it can be set up, and then all the way from bringing in the data all the way till visualization. So today what we'll be looking at is I'll do a quick recap, just a couple of slides on what we discussed before. And then the second thing is the actual topic, the Azure Synapse Link for Cosmos DB, which was released for general availability on 2nd of March. And then we'll also look at a couple of use cases or a bunch of use cases actually, where this model would be applicable. And we'll go through a demo where I have some pieces that is set up. And also there are 3 actual use cases that I was able to pull some documentation on, and then we'll look at that. So without delaying, let's jump right in. Quick recap. In our previous session, we had covered very highly these topics: Synapse Analytics, its architecture, its capabilities, and then how different, how is it different from the traditional analytics pipeline. And we had talked about the 2 different runtimes of workloads that's available: the SQL serverless or the SQL dedicated, as well as the Apache Spark runtime for exploration or enrichment or transformation of the data. And then finally, we even looked at visualizations, very, very basic visualization. See, the architecture we spoke about was something like this. with the Synapse Analytics, you can have any kind of workloads basically at any scale. And then it supports a lot of code-free capabilities, and it does support these languages when you either use the SQL workload or the Apache Spark workload, and then those two workloads. And then it provides all of these capabilities in one single platform, that is ingestion of data, the exploration of data, the analysis of the data, and finally even the visualization of the data. And it's able to do a bunch of these things by making use of the data that is there at a lot of different sources. Most of these data sources first come into the data lake, and then it gets ingested into the Synapse workspace. When Synapse is dealing with the data lake, it makes use of what is called as the common data model. We'll skip the next slide. It is pretty much the same. Now, before I actually go and dive deep into the Azure Synapse Link, I want to make sure this is something which is clear, because this happened with my own colleagues, where I introduced this concept, and the message kind of went across saying, hey, is this a replacement for the traditional analytics or the platform that we have? So now with Synapse Link, what is going to happen, which we'll see in the demo later, is you can actually do visualization of your operational data without having any kind of ETL, without doing any kind of data warehousing actually. So you can directly do a near real-time analyzation or analysis or visualization of your operational data. So with Azure Synapse Link, the idea is not that, hey, now we don't have to worry about ETL anymore. There is still going to be cases where the traditional data warehousing capabilities would be needed. And this capability, the Azure Synapse Link for Azure Cosmos DB capability, is more of use along with the other capabilities, not as a replacement option. With that, let's go right into the topic. So in the last few years, and this is something I've seen myself, a lot of mission critical systems have actually transformed themselves over from the structured databases or the structured data store for storing their transactional information to a document database kind of a technology, and especially the Azure Cosmos DB, and this is something which even my company has done as well. So it is in a number of cases, it is the cloud native operational database of choice. And now when this move has been happening, there has been this demand where, hey, can we get this capability to analyze, visualize this data in real time, rather than having to go through the traditional pipeline approach. Now, before the Azure Synapse Link was introduced, some people, and even in our case, we were able to do it. So what we did is, this actually led to some of those governance problems I was talking about earlier. We let the users connect to the transactional data store directly and do their visualization. So that is definitely one of the options, right? Because Power BI has a connector to Azure Cosmos DB. Now, what happened with the limited number of read units that is allocated for the Cosmos DB? Of course, the actual system that is supposed to work with this database started having performance problems, and not only that. Even the Power BI visualizations that we had set up, those were not working up to the mark also. Now, later on, when we saw this, okay, hey, let's do something here. So what we did is we set up a secondary instance of the Azure Cosmos DB where there is simultaneous writes happening. The secondary instance was just for the analytics. That is for Power BI to read data from, and the primary one was for the application to write data to. Now it worked for a while, but as the content, as the volume of the data started increasing, the same problem started happening, because the way the information is stored in the a regular Cosmos DB transactional data store is not friendly for, analytical friendly, or it is not something that an analytical workload can easily deal with. So because of that, the problems still existed until recently. Actually, we resolved this by using the Synapse Link. One of the other approaches is the traditional way, where the Azure Cosmos DB, if it is the transactional data store of choice, then you can set up some orchestrations through Azure Data Factory, which is going to periodically bring the data in to the data lake, and then that information can then be brought into the Synapse workspace context, and then you can do transformation, analysis, visualization, all of those things. The problem with this is, one is you have to maintain all of those the transformation logic. You have to make sure the data types, everything is actually up to the mark every now and then, because Cosmos DB supports that polymorphic or highly variable data structure. And at the same time, by the time the information reaches the visualization layer, that information is no more real time. You are basically seeing a delayed insights on the data in visualization. So that was also one of the problems. Now that is where Microsoft introduced, I think in our previous meeting when we spoke, I just spoke about this for 1 minute. It was this capability, the Azure Synapse Link, was in preview, and now on 2nd of March they made it generally available. So for long time there has been this barrier between OLTP and OLAP. So bringing that transactional information into an analytics friendly format had always been a challenge, where we had to get data engineers do a lot of activities, and that barrier is what has been taken out with the Azure Synapse Link, when the information is actually stored in Azure Cosmos DB. Now with the Synapse Link, you can do real-time data analytics, near real-time data analytics. There is generally a delay of around 2 to 5 minutes, and I'll explain why. One of the big questions always when this is introduced is, hey, is this going to still have that performance impact on our transactional data store? No, it will not. Whatever read units are allocated to the transactional data store, those are separate, and your analytical store, which will look into what that whole concept is being allocated a whole different processing capability. And then finally, like I said, there is no need to do any kind of ETL for actually visualizing your data. Now, how does all of this capability come into place? What happens in the background? So this is what happens. If you see, the data starts from the left and then comes to the right for visualization or other options. So when you actually set up your Azure Cosmos DB, the moment you enable the Azure Synapse Link on the Cosmos DB, what it does is, along with the transactional data store, which is the row-like storage, it will also set up one more analytical store in its background, which is more of column kind of storage. And this column kind of storage is what is very friendly for analytical workloads. Now, as soon as these mission critical systems are writing this operational data into the transactional store, there is a synchronization mechanism that has been set up between the transactional and analytical store in the background. All of these things happen in the background. It actually keeps on doing a real-time synchronization. It takes all of those raw data and then it converts it into more of a column format. That is the main responsibility of Azure Synapse Link. Along with this, what Synapse Link does is it provides a connector for bringing that analytical store data into the Synapse workspace context, where it can be explored, analyzed, even transformed, and we can even visualize it with the help of these two runtimes we have. One is the Apache Spark runtime and the SQL serverless runtime. Now, once the data is here, you can actually take that information into the very deep integration that is there between Azure Synapse Analytics and Azure Machine Learning, and you can run your Spark machine learning models, or you can run your Azure machine learning models on top of it, and you can even do the big data analytics on top of an enriched transform data, or you can directly visualize in BI. So this is the way how a transactional information automatically becomes analytics friendly and then can be brought in directly to Power BI. So if you see here, there is literally no ETL, nothing that happens, and it directly is available on our Power BI. So these are the capabilities where the moment you connect the Cosmos DB into the Azure Synapse Analytics workspace, and then you run these queries, it runs only on this analytical store, unless your Azure Synapse Link is not enabled, and then you really want to run some of these queries on the transactional store, and then it makes it available for visualization by Power BI. You can actually connect to that particular data set through any kind of SQL clients, and then you can actually run your ad hoc queries, or you can actually bring that information in along with the other data that has been pulled in from the data lake, and then you can analyze the data all at one single place. Now, this is something that happens in the background. So we were just talking about, hey, in the traditional approach, what are those challenges that we have, right? One of the, at least I have seen this personally, every time there is some kind of change or some kind of data values that is entered into the data source during the time of the transformation, so those specific values cause some problems, because of which the transformation fails, and then the data engineers have to go look at that data, what was so different that they had not considered before, and then they have to take specific actions on it. How does the Azure Synapse Link take care of the problem? So if you see, let's take this as one of the example documents that is stored in the Cosmos DB. So here, if you see between these two documents, even though the schema almost looks the same, the purchase date on one of the documents, it is a date format, and another one it has integer format. Same thing in this product vector collection as well. So if you see, this collection has got two integers, one string, and same thing on the right side, and even the order is different. So when the synchronization happens between the transactional data store to the analytical data store, what happens is there is something called as there are actually two different schemas that Microsoft has actually defined for the analytical store. But in the case of the full fidelity schema, what happens is it takes this purchase date and it creates one column for the integer, one column for the string. It puts the string value here from this document, and for the next document, the string is empty because there is no string value. And then similar thing happens here in the purchase date integer. It takes this integer and puts it here, and for the first document, because there is no integer value, it keeps it null. So that way it kind of provides that stabilization or consistency with the data, and then when the analysis or exploration is done on the data, you can actually understand that, hey, for this particular column, these were the types of data types that was there, or for the particular property, and how it is actually returned. Now, with all of these special capabilities, of course, comes the limitations. Couple of limitations that we have seen is when we store these documents or the transactions inside the Cosmos DB, you can have a maximum of around 200 properties, and these 200 properties should have unique names as well. And these are, if I'm not wrong, it is case sensitive. So you can have like a uppercase purchase date and a lowercase purchase date, and those would be treated as two different properties. One more limitation that we have seen is this nesting you see here. That nesting can go only to a maximum of around 5 levels. Above 5 levels, more than 5 levels, it does not support today. So those are some of the limitations. That's pretty much about what this Synapse Link capability is. And with that introduction of the Synapse Link, what all is possible today? So there are two different runtimes we have. The Synapse SQL serverless and then the Apache Spark runtime. So using the Synapse SQL serverless, what you can do is whatever data is exposed out of the Cosmos DB analytical store, you can create SQL views and then you can directly query, you can do a direct query to those SQL views from your dashboards, or you can use any kind of SQL clients like Management Studio, or you can even use the Synapse Studio for exploration of the data by writing any kind of regular T-SQL statements. Along with that, if you are using the Spark pool, then you can actually run transformations on the data, and then you can enrich the data and then perform the big data analytics. There are multiple language options. You can use Scala, Python, Spark SQL, even C#. Along with that, you can also utilize the deep integrations with the Azure Machine Learning, where you can build, train, and run models. So the demo that we have, I have actually set up a real-time scoring model as well, and a batch scoring model. I don't think I have time to really show that entire notebook, but I'll show how it is set up. Along with this, if there is a data warehouse that is already set up in the enterprise, and then we want to bring this data into the data warehouse, that can be done as well by using some of the capabilities that is there in the Azure Synapse Analytics. So adding this Synapse Link has actually opened up some of these avenues for analyzing the data. Now, I think I answered the question earlier as well. One of the questions that we always hear is, hey, can we actually analyze this data alongside with the other data sources that can be brought into Azure Synapse Analytics? And the answer is yes. Either one of these pools can be used for actually analyzing your data. For example, one of the queries I was trying to write for the demo is there was an user account information that is available in Data Lake, and then there is a transactional information that is available in the analytical store of Cosmos DB. And using the T-SQL queries, we could do join on both this, and then bring that information out into Power BI for visualization. So even though one data source is getting updated periodically through Data Factory pipelines, another source is live, it is able to basically merge both of those data as we query and let us visualize it. So before jumping right into the demo, I wanted to just talk quick 2 minutes about some of the updates that we have seen in Synapse Link and Synapse Analytics. So these features more are related to the Synapse Analytics actually. So there is something called as dynamic data masking that was there, but you can do it much more granular now. And there is the SQL auditing capabilities that you can enable on Synapse Analytics. And then this is the piece that we are looking at, where Synapse Link is now generally available. And then there are some security updates as well that has been done, where you can actually isolate the instances of Synapse Analytics and the Cosmos DB by you setting up virtual networks. There is data level security as well, by where there is, I think you can define your own keys, and that those keys will be used for encrypting your data, and then you can have your own credentials as well, which we could not define before. Now, some more features which are in preview, which was released recently, and the one that I'm excited the most about is the first one, which is the Power BI Performance Accelerator. So you will see when I actually demo later how the data shows up in the in Power BI. It is a little bit slow, and there is some work going on, on the Microsoft side where they are trying to improve. Along with, and this is still in preview, and I'm sure they are collecting feedback and looking to provide this as a general capability. And there is cognitive services integration. This is not something I've actually tried. I really want to try this. And the machine learning integration is something that I tried, but I wanted to do a demo. I have set it up. I can talk about it and show some of the notebooks. And column level encryption as well. In the analytical store, you can do the column level encryption now. So these are some of the features that is in preview. The previous slide is something that is generally available. If there are any questions, I can take. Otherwise, I'll jump right into the demo.
Yeah, Sharath, I had a quick question about a couple slides back. You mentioned that that when there are differing data types, it'll create two separate columns off of that. Now, when you consume that data, and maybe you're about to get into this, but do you treat the column that you're trying to access as purchase date, or do you have to configure it to understand that there's a purchase date and a purchase date string and a purchase date int, and you have to consolidate them?
You have to consolidate them.
Okay.
Yeah,
but they're both available, so you'll be able to see them.
Yes. Yes, it will make both of those columns available as two separate columns itself. And then if you want to create a derived column, then you can put a calculation out there and create a derived column when you create those views. Otherwise, you can choose to use only one of the columns, depending upon the use case.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, I'll jump right in before my credits run out. You can see there's only $43 left. All right, so we will look at a bunch of things. First thing, I will actually show what an regular Cosmos DB looks like, and then what do we have to do for enabling the Azure Synapse Link. So what I have done here is in my resource group, I have created a Cosmos DB instance, and it has nothing. This was created 15-20 minutes back, or an hour back. And this did not have the Synapse Link enabled by default. So the moment you go into a Cosmos DB instance that does not have a Synapse Link, Azure Synapse Link enabled, if you go into the Data Explorer, you will start seeing this option here, which basically lets you enable the Azure Synapse Link. You can just click on it, and then you can click on enabling it. Otherwise, one more option is you can try to create a new container or a new database, and then let's say I try to give this name here, and I can give able to come up with a better name. Let's give this as the partition key. Now here, if you see, there is an option for you to enable the analytical store. So this is what I was talking about. So by default, if there is no Synapse Link enabled, then automatically what you will see is just a transactional store. If you want the analytical store, then you have to enable the Synapse Link, and after enabling, you still have the option to choose not to create that analytical store in the background. So here also, if the Synapse Link is not enabled, I can enable it from here. It opens the same pop-up. This is going to take a few minutes to enable, I think. Otherwise, let's see if it is already enabled. No, it is still running in the background. We don't have to worry. I have one more copy where we can go and look into. So this is one more instance of the Cosmos DB where the Synapse link is already enabled. So now if you see, if I go to the Data Explorer pane, it does not show the enable Synapse link option. And along with that, what happens is once you enable the Synapse link, when you go to the settings window of any of these container and go to the settings tab, you can see there is something called as analytical storage time to live. So this generally does not show when you don't have the Synapse link enabled. So here, this is something very important and very useful. We in one of the use cases that have worked, and actually the today's demo is also something similar. So I can actually bring up that diagram. So this is the demo that I have set up. So what I've tried to do is fraud detection kind of a demo. So there is always payment transactions that is getting streamed, and those stream data is ingested into an instance of the Cosmos DB, and this is running in a multi-master mode. Basically, it can do a cross-write across multiple replications of the Cosmos DB instance, and along with that, it has the analytical store enabled where it is doing a real-time sync. And the moment the data comes in here, there is a change feed that has been set up with one of the Spark notebooks, which takes each of those transactions and it actually does a real-time scoring by using a model that is created in Azure Machine Learning. And it basically identifies whether that particular transaction is suspicious or not. And it basically writes all of that data into the one more Cosmos DB container. And also there is a batch scoring model, which basically takes all of that information, again does one more round of scoring to identify and see if any of those previously identified suspicious transactions are actually suspicious, or were there any transactions that were actually missed by from being tagged as suspicious. And then finally we take this analytical store, do some queries and visualize the data here in the Power BI. That's the demo that I've set up. I don't know if I'll get time to talk about the ML part of it, but we'll definitely look at how the data goes all the way. Okay, now coming to the TTL. So now the use case which we were just talking about, it was streaming the transactions into the Azure Cosmos DB. Now, when we are talking about streaming, it means what it means is the Cosmos DB where the data is getting streamed to, that is not the source of truth. The source of truth for those banking transactions is a totally different system, which is there, let's say maybe in the bank's internal network or somewhere else, basically. Which in turn means we do not want these transactions to be stored forever. So that is this time to live. So the time to live that you have here is more of a TTL value that we set up for the transactional store. So if I set this up, then for 60 days by default, that particular transaction will be there in the transactional store. Or I can actually give any number of seconds I want in seconds for how long those transactions should be present in the transactional store. The same option is available for the analytical store. So this is something amazing. Imagine the data comes into the transactional store, there is an autosync that runs, and the data gets converted into the column storage, and then it goes into the analytical store. So the data is deleted from the transactional store, but the data, the converted data is still there in the analytical store. And you have control all the way till you can tell, hey, the information that is there in the analytical store, I want it to be there forever. Or you can even tell how long that data should be there in the analytical store. So you have that control of indicating how long the information should be present in each of these different data stores, even though it is one single Cosmos DB container. And so here, with this TTL, the transactional TTL, you can actually assign the TTL values to individual documents. So when you actually store those documents, you still have the control to change the TTL values for every document. And whereas in the case of analytical storage, it is more of at a container level, you set those TTL values. So if it is off here, it means there is no analytical store that is enabled. If it is on default, that means you're going to keep that transaction forever in the analytical store. And the third option, you're basically going to tell what is the number of seconds you want to keep that information in the analytical store. So I'll just show how it looks. So I have actually pulled in, I've created some dummy data. And if you see this, this is the TTL value I was talking about. So for every record that is being set, that has been inserted into the this transactions container, automatically you have the it will set the TTL value by default, and if you want to override for each transaction, then you still have that control. Okay, all right. So now that I've already come here, I actually wanted to show if I can actually run some transactions. No need, I think. Here, let's go right into, you know what, I'll do it. So we have this here, right? So these are all, if you see, there are no items in any one of this. What I'll try to do is I have a console application which can actually stream data directly into that particular Cosmos DB instance. So let's run this, and okay, it is here. Let's see what happens. It should connect. Right, I have like around 200,000 records here. So for every 5 or 10 seconds, I think it pushes out like 1,000 records at a time. And let's let it push around 10,000, and then we'll see what we have to do with it. Okay, 6. The 7,000 is taking a little bit more time. So this is kind of something like what the streaming would generally do. So we are at 10,000. Let this run in the background. I think no, I don't have credits left. Let's pause this, and we'll come out here. And then if I go into the transactions and look at the items, so now you see I've got all of these items. And then here, when I actually go into my data and I open the CSV, which has those 200,000 rows of information, I don't know if you can really make it out from this format here. There is no TTL value that I'm actually sending to the Cosmos DB, but after I enter the data, it automatically sets that value there. And in the code, I have the control to change it to anything else, anything different if I want to for that particular transaction. Now, what we will do now is we will try to, so let's check one thing. I have enabled this, right? Yes, the analytical storage is on, so we are good there. Now we will quickly go into the Synapse Analytics, and then we'll bring this data in. So I think the moment I try to do it now, it might not show any of the information because that sync is still running. The sync takes around 2 to 5 minutes. 2 minutes if you have dedicated RUs for each of these containers. In my case, I don't, so it might take around close to 5 minutes. We don't have to really worry because I have one more instance where the data is pulled in. Okay, so we are in the Synapse workspace. So let's try to connect to external data. And then here you see there are two different options. You can connect to MongoDB API or SQL API. I have used SQL API, so I'll just use this option. Continue. Let's call this as PUG demo. Like this. So let me just quickly make sure this is the one, right? So it is in HPPUG2, and then this is DM and premium. Okay, so we'll take the premium one, and then this was the account, and then Woodgrove was the name of the database. So it is as simple as that. The moment I can test the connection and make sure it's working. Yeah, it is good. So it is as simple as this. So we just have to click create, and then it automatically creates that connection now. Now the moment this linked service is created, it has the capability to connect both to the OLTP as well as the OLAP. You can, if you really want to, you can connect to the transactional store as well. Otherwise, you can connect to the analytical store. So let's make sure everything is okay here. Looks okay. So this is the one which we just created. Okay, so now I was talking about two different things earlier. One is the real-time scoring. I'll just go through this quickly. So this is basically what we have done is Cosmos DB has something called as a change field capability. So using the change field capability, we are able to load a scoring model that we have created in Azure machine learning, and then use that to actually score or tag each of these transactions to identify whether it is actually suspicious or not. And then we are storing the information back into one of the databases itself. Let's see where it is. Okay, here it is. So this is where we take all of those predictions, whether it is the suspicious transaction or not, and then we write that information back into the Cosmos DB. So here, this is something which is important here. If you see, when we are writing the information back into the Cosmos database, you cannot write it into an analytical store directly. It always has to be written into the transactional store. And that is what this line is actually indicating. It is actually trying to open the Cosmos DB in the OLTP format, and then writing it into this particular container, the suspicious transactions. And here, if you see, this is actually reading that data back again, the transactions. And here, if you see, again, it is using the OLTP way of reading the transaction. This is what I was talking earlier about. If you really want to read the data in directly from the transactional store, you can still do it. So you just have to indicate whether you want to read it using the OLTP store or the OLAP store. And the OLAP store, I think it is here. Let's look at this notebook. It is actually not here. It should be somewhere here. So this is how it looks. There is nothing that is hugely different in these two statements. All you have to indicate is whether it is OLTP or OLAP, and automatically it reads information from that corresponding data store. Okay, so this is running as we have been entering the data. It kicks in through the change feed. It takes that whole model in, and then it does all of that scoring. So now if we actually go into that Woodgrove database, oh, it would not be here, right? Here. Give me 1 second. I think I can show it from this one. Okay, So this is the suspicious transactions container where those notebooks were actually writing the data back after it was tagged. And you see here, this is the flag where if that particular transaction was suspicious, then it tags it as suspicious. And for some of them, so many different ones. There are no non-suspicious transactions I'm able to pull now. Let's see dot. I don't want to make spelling mistake. Is equal to 0. Oh, you know why? Because this is writing only the suspicious transactions. So that's why. So the non-suspicious transactions and everything should be, I think, here. Yeah, I don't see the flag here, but this container is having only the suspicious transactions. Anyways, now going back in here, right? Now what I can actually do is, if you see, I can access all of that data in here. Now I'll show you something which is very useful. I will go back to the Cosmos DB that we were looking at, which is this. I will create one more container in the same database, and then let's call it as OLTP test. And then let's give anything we want in the partition key. And I am going to call the analytical store. I'll tag it as off. So let's assume we just want to use this for transaction purpose. I'll create this. Should take a second or two. Come on. What I'm going to show is, once this is created, now if I go to the settings on this one, you see that analytical stores time to live doesn't even show up. And along with that, if I go into this Synapse Analytics and then I refresh here, that container is showing up, and notice the difference in the icons here. So whatever has these the bar chart icon embedded on those folders, those are the ones which has the analytical store enabled on them, and the one that does not have doesn't have the analytical store enabled on them. So that is something which you can use to distinguish easily. And what we will do now is actually we can directly take any one of these containers, and then if you want to analyze the data using the Apache Spark pool, you can create a new notebook. For example, I want to if I want to set up that some kind of operation or some kind of code when there is new transactions added, then I could load that streaming data frame into a notebook, and then I can write the additional set of code here. And here, if you see, it is actually taking the transactional store information. Now, if I want to just bring the data into the data frame and do some analysis, it directly lets you access the, you can always change this if you want, but it recommends you to use the OLAP one. Now, one more thing which we can do is we can directly analyze this data in an SQL script as well. And what I have done is I have actually created some views on top of this data, and which we'll look at. So this is the way you would access it. So here, if you see, what you would do is you will use this open rowset capability, and you'll tell, hey, my provider is Cosmos DB, and here is the account and connection information. This is the object that I want to pull in, and you can actually use multiple objects, and you can do joins as well. Now let's go into the, I think it is here itself in the workspace. If you go to the views, so here, if you see, I have created these views on top of that the analytical store that is there. So I can directly, so now let's say I'm running this query now where I'm trying to bring in those the top 100 accounts. When this query is being run, it is actually running directly on the Cosmos DB analytical store. And what, yeah. So this data which you see here, it is not even being brought into the SQL pool at all. It is directly using that Synapse link, going to the analytical store of the Cosmos DB, and then bringing this data in. Now, what we can do once we have all of these views, so I have set up like 5 different views here. By joining a couple of tables. I'll not bore you with all those SQL scripts, but now once we have this, what we can do is you can start putting together your visualization. All you would have to do is there are multiple options. I'll show one of the options now, and we'll look at the other one also. You can go to the develop tab. You can tell, hey, I want to create a new Power BI report, and then you can basically tell, hey, in this workspace, I want to create that particular Power BI report, and I just want to create a new data set. And if you click on this new data set, it will give you an option to download that PBIDS file, which we looked in the previous session. And then if I actually download this and then open this.
Sharath, while that opens, in terms of the cost for running these queries, is there a cost on the Cosmos side and serverless? I mean, albeit pretty small, I imagine, but or is it just the serverless that you're paying for at that point?
It is both the sides. There is a cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and for those that don't know, serverless very affordable. So it's I think $5 per terabyte of data process. So and actually the first 10 terabytes I think until the end of July are free. So definitely a good time to play with it.
Right. True. I thought they actually showed the cost somewhere. Maybe when I set it up.
Yeah.
You can. One of the things I've seen is if you create a dedicated SQL pool, it does not let you connect to the analytical store for some reason. I need to figure out whether it is me doing some mistake or if there is actually that limitation.
Interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's somewhat interesting. So I have the information on the other screen. The Power BI desktop is not letting me drag it over here. I try to open that PBIDS file. Let me just share my other screen. And if you see this here, the moment I opened that PBIDS file, it automatically connected to the Synapse instance. It knows what is the SQL pool I want to connect to, and automatically it gives me all of those views here. So I can take all of this and then try to load it. And I think that's where I'll have to select direct query. And that is it. Now I am actually bringing in one, I think the copy of that live data in here, and then I can start building my dashboards. So what I did in the last couple of days is I put this dashboard together for that the live data. So let's see, this was today morning. It was at 296,000 transactions. Let me just refresh and see how much it is at now. Oh, you know what? Let's not do this refresh here. We'll go directly into the Power BI here. So what you can always do is you build your dashboards here, and then you can publish. And after you publish, you can always look and analyze those dashboards directly in the Synapse Analytics. There's something we looked in our previous session. So this is one of the dashboards that I have published. So if we look at this, This has around 331,000. So this is what I was talking about earlier, the performance problem. So it is still refreshing. And now I have created all the smallest resources here. So that might be one of the reasons why it is a little bit slow. It takes around close to 7 to 10 seconds for refreshing the information, or basically doing that live query or direct query on the analytical store of Cosmos DB. And that's I think that is pretty much what it is. So the other option for connecting, what we can do is, there is no need to do any of this, create a new data set, download the file, nothing. When you create your Synapse Analytics workspace, here it is. It gives you two different endpoints here. There is a dedicated SQL endpoint and serverless SQL endpoint. You can use either one of these, and then you just copy this. And then, this is something we have done in our company actually, where we'll give this endpoint and say, hey, you can connect to this particular SQL server, and this also you connect to it just like any regular SQL server. Use the Microsoft account. Yeah, use this. I think this is the password. And yeah, that is it. So just like, interesting, I should have used the right password, but it actually brings in, you can connect to it just like, a regular SQL database, and then it shows all of those views, and then you can do what you have to do in Power BI. That is also one of the options.
Yeah, we do this all the time too. This connection through, especially the serverless, is really handy for Power BI or any other reporting tool. But obviously, we all know Power BI is the best. But even through Management Studio, you could connect to see what's going on. It's really helpful.
Right. So in what we did with that whole governance problem is, in our company, so the users wanted to have like a view. Some of them even wanted like an Excel export of the data, and they wanted like a job set up every day. Hey, give us an Excel export of the data, and then we'll use Power Queries, bring that into the Power BI, and then you can embed the Power BI dashboard somewhere. And so it went all the way till there. And that is when we actually set up this whole Cosmos DB instance with the Synapse Link enabled. We started integrating a streaming capability through the use of event hubs, and bringing all the data in here into the Cosmos DB, and then setting up a bunch of views. And then we just gave them the views and told them, hey, all you have to do is use these views. You're not going to get an export. You're not going to get a connection string directly to wherever the actual data store is. And the moment they saw that they were getting that live data, they were very happy with using these views. And that whole problem we had where the Power BI dashboards are doing direct query on our actual transactional data store, those were taken care of by using this option.
That's great.
One more thing. So I'm going to change my screen again. Last couple of slides. We'll jump right into these pieces here. Okay. There are around 6 different use cases where I've seen this being used extensively. Forecasting, basically wherever we need that live analytics capability, right? The near real time. So in this forecasting as well, so it is, they've always, or in most of the use cases, they've used the machine learning and the analytics store, all of them together. So here, the data comes in through Data Factory, gets transformed also through the streaming. The transactional information gets auto-synced, and then there are ML models running, which is again scoring and putting the data back, and then that is visualized here. There is one more use case, which is This is something I have to try, where in the e-commerce websites, we can come up with live recommendations based upon what the users are actually trying to order, where the order data is pushed, it again gets synced, and then also there is a recommendation model that runs and then gives the recommendation back. And even this is something, again, I have to try, predictive maintenance of IoT devices. There's something which is very applicable for my company. And that is it. That is it. We can talk about some questions, answers, if there are any questions.
Yeah, definitely. That was very amazing. Thanks for putting that together. Incredibly thorough too. I like how you touched on, all the different, aspects, demoed everything, and even some of the use cases. Really helps kind of paint the picture.
Thanks.
I definitely learned quite a few things today too. So, anybody have any questions?
Okay. Before I hand it over, I wanted to say thank you, the entire Talent team. This is second time, and you guys are always amazing. I get to learn a lot.
Yeah, no, we certainly appreciate it. Definitely, valuable, and we did record this too, so we can get you the recording too if you want to share with any other folks who weren't able to make it. So thanks again. Anybody else have any other questions for Sharath? Otherwise, we can kind of move on to the next topic. All right.
Thank you.
All right, let me get my video going again here. So 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen. Teams is moving a little slowly for me for some reason. That's because I'm not in Teams. I'm gonna have to rejoin 1 second. I'll be right back.
Sure, it was great. Definitely helpful. New things.
Thanks, Manish.
All right, sorry about that. I was somehow in a random web browser in the meeting. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Is Mike still out there, Mike Thomas? I'll have to get in the recording if not. All right, well, real quick, I just wanted to address a question he asked about joining tables with multiple columns, because this is something people run into all the time. So you may be familiar with this dashboard in a data set if you've ever attended, but what we're showing here in this visual is from two separate tables. Our geography table, we want to show country, and our sales table, revenues, revenue by country. And all the bars are the same height, and that leads you to realize that, oh, for some reason my sales and geography table aren't linked. And the first thing you think is, well, maybe I joined by country, or maybe I joined by zip code. Turns out neither of those are unique. I would caution folks to be very careful when you see this yellow box that says you're going to create a many-to-many relationship. I almost wish they didn't add this feature, because it gets you in a little bit of trouble. So if I'm joining on zip code, the problem is they're not unique across countries, so you might end up double counting, and you can't, like as you see here, I can't like hold the control yet and pick two different columns to join on. So if you do pick this, and you'll see in the relationship it has a star to star, a many to many relationship, and you go back to this view, it may look like you're all set. The U.S. has 815 million in revenue, but it turns out that that is not accurate. I'm going to delete that relationship. With the Power BI dashboard in a day, what they show you how to do is create another column that's called a calculated column. It's a combination of the zip and country. So if I click on that here, you'll see it's the zip code and the country concatenated together in the geography table. I do the same thing in the sales table, zip and country. And you create those just by right-clicking, saying new column. Then you're able to make this relationship on those two columns And notice that's a 1 to many, and it has the arrow showing the directionality. Then if I look at the data, 804. So you noticed before I was getting a couple duplicates in there. So be very careful with many-to-many relationships. So that said, I still don't love this solution because I have to create these random concatenated columns. They're not the most efficient to store, and a couple other challenges. You got to be careful that you don't end up having. Oh, did I just delete the column by mistake? Oops. Well, I don't want it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to show you another way to do it, and I'll have to get the recording to Mike Thomas. You go back into the query editor. So for those who don't know, transform data brings you back into this other window here. And this is where I pulled in the data originally. So in the geography table, for instance, you see I have my columns here. And the most recent change I did was add what I'm calling geography ID. And it's just an index for every single record. So I have a unique identifier as opposed to multiple columns. Now what I could do is go to my sales table, and rather than linking on the zip and country like I was doing before, I want to pull in that geography ID to my sales table like a star schema typically would. So from the sales table on the home tab, I say merge queries, and I'm going to merge with my geography table. This is like a join for folks who know SQL. And here I have the luxury of holding down control and picking 2 columns. So I'm joining on zip and country, zip and country. And I could make this an outer join, inner join, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. And this is going to bring in that geography table. I could hit this little expand button. I'm going to unselect everything. I don't even need the original table as a prefix. And I just want the geography ID. So I'll let that run for a second. Now remember, in Power BI Query Editor, it's only going to grab the first 1,000 records, column profiling based on top 1,000 records. And you can see I got my geography IDs. This is going to take a little while. I'm going to do it anyway, I guess. It's going to reload the sales table. And there's, I want to say there's 15 million rows in there. So it's going to take a couple seconds to pull that in. This is just from my local machine. So it should go pretty quick. But what I'll end up having is a new geography column in this table that I'll be able to use to join to this table by ID. So that's kind of the workaround. And you could do that with a whole bunch of different tables. And we don't necessarily need to wait for that to finish, but I'll show that when it eventually does. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. The one other thing I wanted to mention, there's this new feature that's come out. Well, it's not come out yet, but they announced it at Ignite. And I think there's a number of folks out there who are familiar with Analyze in Excel. So if I go to, let me find a data set here. I go into my workspaces, and I think I have, I'll just use the Power BI dashboard in a day. Maybe one without row level security. Okay, so if I just go into one of these reports, this is that same data set we were actually just looking at by coincidence. Many of you have seen there's an option to, oh, did I not enable build on this? I don't think I did. Oh, here it is. I have the option here to analyze in Excel. For those that haven't seen this before, it's going to download a little skeleton of an Excel document in Open Excel. I missed clicking on that. And as you can see, Excel's loading over here. And when it eventually opens, you'll see I am presented with a pivot table. Many of you have already seen this. But what this has done is this has a live connection back to the Power BI service. So it didn't pull any of the data in. Remember, I told you there's 15 million rows in this data set. But what I could do is say I want to show sales by country, and there is my data. This has a connection back to the Power BI service. So if I were to give this to somebody else, assuming they have access, they have an Excel document that has that same connection, and you're pretty much guaranteed that the data is always fresh, and every time the data in the Power BI service updates, this will as well. Now there's a feature where you can now say, I want to publish to the Power BI service. And you have two options. I mean, if it's just a regular Excel document and you want to make the data available in a Power BI data set, you could do that. You also have the option to upload the Excel document itself. This was successful, so I'm going to go back here and notice now I have oh, where did I publish that? Oh, I published this to the wrong workspace. This went to my workspace. I wanted to put that in. I wish this would be nice if it was alphabetical. All right, so now this should show up here. Yeah, there it is already. I didn't need to refresh, but now I could click on this and have that same notebook or workbook in the Power BI service. Now here's the thing. This gives the impression that I could come in here and make additional changes, but notice it says we're unable to make this connection. It gives some error code. That's the feature that's coming soon. Having this live connected to the Power BI service, able to change it here using Excel Online, and having this data refresh happen automatically every time Power BI is updated. So this was announced last month at Ignite, and hopefully comes out in the next month's updates, and you'll hear in the next meeting in June when Graham does the next PUG updates. So this is going to be a game changer, I think, because so many folks love working in Excel, myself included, and it'll just give that one additional option for interacting with the data. All right, let's see if this finished. Oh, this finished, and you'll see it actually, when I have the option to discover foreign key relationships on, and it guessed just because they're the same data type, same name, that they're related. So if I go back to the report, I should see this number. Although I feel like that was a different number than we saw last time, so I might have to take a look to make sure I did that right the previous time on my join, but you at least get the idea there. Does anybody have any questions on this or the new Excel update that's coming out? There's one other thing I could mention about Excel is you don't have to start in Power BI either. Now you have the option to, when I come into the data tab and say get data, I have the option to say get data from Power BI, and it brings up all the data sets that I have available. Notice ones that are certified from an endorsement perspective or promoted show up near the top, and I could connect to them directly. So, same idea, you'll get the pivot table and whatnot. And one thing that I showed in a previous meeting, I made one of these data sets a featured data set. So there's Van Arsdale, Natura, are some of the, I covered this in a previous meeting too, but some of the manufacturers that are in that fake data set for dashboard in a day. If I highlight those, notice I have this option here to say from my organization. Since I marked this data set, Dyad Manufacturers, as a featured data set, and it tells you exactly where it is, I could say, well, this data is manufacturers that my company works with. It associates these records with that. And I could say, okay, I want to know what the manufacturer group is. Okay, Natura is a top competitor. Maybe I want to pull in the logo, and it actually pulls in the image URL from the the data that I have in the database. So some pretty cool integration Excel Power BI that keeps coming out. Kind of one of the more exciting ones is like stock. So if you're doing Microsoft or IBM or whatever, you could do the same thing with this built-in stock one, and you want to see what the the price was or the exchange. You can do that as well. So kind of a cool feature. I don't know why they called it data types, but that's what it is. All right, so that's what I was going to cover. Does anybody have any questions or other topics they wanted to address while we're all here? All right, well, I think that's it. Let me just go back to the slide deck. I think I still have that open somewhere. And again, where is my slide? So our next meeting, I think Gina has penciled in for June 10th. So look for everybody to come again then. Feel free to invite friends, colleagues, etc. We'll probably send the invitation out in a month or so just to get it on your calendars. If anybody's interested in participating, I saw Mike Thomas mentioning UI design, a very important topic when you're doing report development. Happy to have him. Since he maybe had to drop off, we won't put him on the spot for the next meeting. Happy if anybody has any other topics they'd like to cover as well. This list is a little bit old, but a lot of new things coming out. So feel free to reach out in the meantime if you have any questions or looking for some additional clarity. Happy to take a couple minutes and talk through some things. All right. I guess with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any final words, but appreciate everybody coming and hopefully enjoy the next couple months now that things are getting a little bit warmer here and we're able to get outside a bit more. Not today with all the rain, but in general.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Jared, and everybody else. And I can't remember his name. Sharath. I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation. It was really awesome.
Yeah, that was definitely a great one for sure. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Yep. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.